green development. President Xi's announcement in his address to United Nations General Assembly last year, that is, China will step up support for other developing countries in developing green and low carbon energy and will not build new coal-fired power projects abroad, has been hailed by policymakers as a practical step towards combating the looming threat of climate change. To combat climate change and protect further environment degradation, global investments of approximately $1 trillion are required to make transition towards a low-carbon economy. The World Economic Forum has also predicted that an annual investment of around $700 billion is required for the promotion of green and clean energy, clean transportation, and the conservation of forests. To mobilize these investments, green financing guidelines are expected to play a very critical role. The green financing guidelines refer to the development of supervision guidelines and issuance of an umbrella of policies on their implementation. As per Pakistan's NDCs, 35% of its projected emissions reduction is subject to international financial support, and it requires $101 billion for its green energy transition alone. Besides the critical need of promoting green financing, there is a lack of policy guidance that creates both opportunities and risks. Therefore, green financing could be promoted through a two-pronged approach, focusing on environmental risk management and green investment, and financing for energy projects under CPEC in Pakistan. This will assist in the effective promotion of the investment in energy infrastructure and clean energy technologies, therefore helping in achieving the targets of the 7th Sustainable Development Goal, which is SDG 7, that is affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Nevertheless, the first projects for tackling the just energy transition have started with the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and the German Development Corporation. Projects on biodiversity and nature-based solutions with the World Wildlife Fund, FAO, and CFW Development Bank. In order to transform the economy to resource efficiency, in 2017, the State Bank of Pakistan introduced a green banking framework to strengthen the resilience of banks and development finance institutions against the threats and challenges resulting from the environmental degradation. Moreover, China has also expressed its commitment to developing a framework for green energy development to help Pakistan achieve its sustainability goals. The CPEC projects under Energy Portfolio provide an untapped opportunity to get benefits and diversify the generation capacity and support economic development by strengthening trade between China and Pakistan. Given this background, it is critical to understand that financial resources for expanding just energy transition and rehabilitating the biodiversity are by far not sufficient, since the policymakers, administrators, investors, and banks often lack expensive expertise in such technologies. The result is that risks are underestimated and projects do not result in substantial output. Investments that fail to prepare for existing and future risks might not generate expected returns and may become stranded assets and could open investors up to legal action. Such energy investments and other infrastructure critical to Pakistan's development have the potential to be damaged or destroyed, and the services they provide interrupted by natural hazards, including those that will be magnified under climate change. Therefore, it is important to analyze the tools to minimize environmental risks into CPEC operation and engage banks, institutional investors, and financial regulators from Pakistan, as well as CPEC for analysis of building a green financing portfolio. In the backdrop of these challenges, the Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Islamabad, in collaboration with the Pak China Institute, Islamabad, is organizing this capacity building workshop to help dissect the green financing mechanisms for CPEC energy projects in perspective of Pakistan's commitment of shifting to 60% renewable energy by 2030. This workshop will address the following objectives. Number one is the identification of key projects and innovative mechanisms to scale access to green finance for CPEC energy projects, to review the existing policy landscape and industry ranking regulations with regards to monitoring, evaluation, and learning mechanisms such as voluntary and mandatory reporting and emission disclosures in Pakistan. And it also seeks to find a way forward for Pakistan to develop green asset portfolios and disclosure to access fiscal and non-fiscal for CPEC energy projects, introduce incentives, environmental and social indices, and benchmarks and ESG instruments, contingent credit equity facilitation, and review of green lending models for CPEC. Now I'd like to hand the mic back over to Dr. Hina.
Thank you so much, Nesma. Thank you so much for a background, a comprehensive background, and the scope and the objectives of this particular workshop. Before I go on to a real background of this workshop under which we are conducting this capacity building workshop is the initiative that I've also mentioned earlier, is on the Green CPEC Alliance that we have initiated and launched yesterday in collaboration with Pakistan China Institute and our partners from China, different institutions, and also Chinese embassy and the stakeholders, especially the investors like China Gorges, and all China Enterprises Association, and few of the stakeholders will be joining us today as well. So I'm very pleased to announce this again, and I will give you a brief introduction of what is the Alliance about, what are the objectives under which this is the first activity that we are conducting today, and how we are leading it, and how we are seeing it in the upcoming year, and then what's the plan for 3 to 5 years. So the basic idea is to build capacity around this today and take it forward in a collective effort and to engage all of you in this process. So can I please request MIS team to play the presentation? Since I forgot my glasses, so I would like to stand up and give you what is Green CPEC Alliance? So it is basically focusing on how we could redirect the Chinese investments from the earlier coal-based or fossil fuel-based investments to green, sustainable, and decarbonized alternatives. This is the main theme under which we'll be focusing on our work under the initiative. So as I said earlier, it's just not STPI, but we're also joined by Pakistan China Institute, the leading organization working on Pakistan-China relations and other projects. Initially, it was Mustafa Sayed Sayed, Executive Director, PCI, who was supposed to be there, but due to some urgent commitment, will be joining us a little later. That allows me to present the whole background, the objectives of the Alliance that we're doing. So as you have already heard from Nesma and also must have seen in the concept note and how this came along, well, we have seen that China has invested around 36 billion in energy so far, 10.6 billion in the transport sector as well. 28% are in investment are in coal and 7% is in gas. And this shows us that we need to bring these projects. And how we could do that? Because China is currently leading the renewable energy, especially solar, wind, and hydro, all over the globe. Pakistan is also having the capacity to produce 30,000 megawatt of wind energy, which can lead change in Pakistan. China has recently announced to stop investing in coal-fired fossil fuel-based power plants in 2021, back in December. And that was announced by their president, Mr. Xi Jinping. And that allowed us to actually be more motivated to the initiative that we have launched. We have a commitment coming from the Chinese government, from the stakeholders, and how we could turn our investments from the fossil fuel, from the brown investments to the green investments. On the other side, Pakistan has shown a strong commitment to turn towards clean and green Pakistan with huge investments and policy that is called Alternative Renewable Energy Policy, under which we focus on increasing the share of renewable sources by 60%. That includes VRE, that is variable renewable energy resources, that is solar and wind, to increase their share by 30% by 2030. So this is exactly what we needed to get more ambitious and more oriented towards how can we only focus on looking at the potential of renewable energy in Pakistan, and China being a strong partner and a great friend of Pakistan becomes this whole green transition seems like, and it is actually a mutual aspiration of both China and Pakistan. How we can harness this potential, how we could actually explore the possible opportunities to leverage from all these. We will be focusing on some of the essential components like green financing, like other investment opportunities, and the objectives that we have already mentioned. So, what is the importance of these red lines? A green CPEC would act as a role model for making other BRI investments sustainable in different countries across the globe. So, as I mentioned, that not only Pakistan, but China is working on bringing the whole BRI Belt Road Initiative, under which the green CPEC could make a flagship model that could play an important role to make toll trade as a successful example of a green development around the globe. So, achieving sustainability goals relating to climate change and environmental conservation while simultaneously promoting economic growth through CPEC and the Belt and Road Initiative. So, while we're looking into the economic prosperity, we're also looking into how we could achieve the Sustainable Development Goals under the UN Agenda 2030 and environmental conservation. So, Pakistan being one of the topmost vulnerable country to the impacts, it's highly crucial for us to take measures and to adapt to the impacts, to mitigate the impacts under the policies, the right solutions, the technologies, the innovations, the investment more in the clean energy technologies. It would address the concern of all stakeholders involved in the process. So one of the apprehension that you all have must heard in the BRI investment and CPEC investment is not just debt, but it's also the environmental sustainability. The biggest component is how these development initiatives and these development investments are taking care of the sustainability indicators, how they are going to mitigate the impacts which are being caused by these investments, how we could mainstream these environmental and the social priorities, that is the sustainability priorities, into the development priorities of CPEC. So from Chinese and Pakistani stakeholders, we'll be working very closely with the public sector. I already mentioned that we already have a strong commitment from the Chinese government already. Also, private sector, regulating agencies, investors, developers, civil society, academia, CPEC authority will be joined by Dr. Yagel, who is heading the CPEC authority, Chinese enterprises, corporations, think tanks. So the overall goal is to support the Green CPEC Alliance, which aims to promote the green development of China-Pakistan economic corridor, particularly in its green transition, energy transition. So if I look into the three specific objectives, we are looking into how we could support redirecting these Chinese investments from carbon emission intensive options to alternative greener options. The second is how we could accelerate both supply and demand for green infrastructure investments, and also making other BRI initiatives green using the experience in forming in CPEC. So it carries a huge importance for China itself, showcase the best practices that it would be implementing, but it has started implementing at the CPEC projects. There are three objectives under which this alliance will be working, and we are kicking off this activity under one of those as well. So we are building capacity in the green financing guidelines and sustainable development needs of Pakistan to enhance dialogues, communication, and training workshops. Today marks the first training workshop that we are conducting. The second, we have started doing research. We have started doing research on how we could go green using case studies of the CPEC projects, and how could we develop green financing guidelines and framework through evidence-based research. Then last but not the least, we will be advocating very strongly the need for green CPEC through extensive social media campaigns and close engagements with relevant Pakistani and Chinese stakeholders. So what needs to be done is to provide appropriate connections to accelerate green investment opportunities, using Chinese experience in green development to ensure a green development of CPEC. This is extremely crucial because China is leading the green transition in their own country. Their practices and policy measures have been remarkable so far. How we could learn the lessons, how we could use the successful model being implemented, we could incorporate into the development of CPEC with their strong enthusiasm, and of course, the measures that could be taken under the frameworks to make it more green. Ensuring that there is a strong indication or inclination of Pakistan towards opting for the greener policy. There is a strong need to sensitize why we need to switch towards greener options, greener investments, in building capacity, raising awareness. Knowledge sharing is one of the key elements to begin with. Then developing appropriate skills to plan and evaluate green projects in Pakistan. This is again why we talk about how we could actually implement, monitor, and evaluate that we are complying to the standards of the environment, not doing anything that is not sustainable. It is important to see, it is important to develop appropriate skill sets and trainings on specific tools and mechanisms under which the stakeholders and the regulators and the relevant bodies can be well equipped to ensure that this monitoring happens in a more effective manner. So in 3 to 5 years plan, we are looking into ensuring opportunities to phase out the unsustainable projects in accordance with the green development guidance for BRI projects, accelerate sustainable projects and provide appropriate support for moderately sustainable projects. And we will be working internationally with Chinese, with the other stakeholders who are working on BRI, who are working on CPEC. And there's a coalition called Belt Road Initiative, Green Coalition, that will be working very closely with a broader stakeholder group. So for the first year, we are focusing on the capacity building workshop, the high-level conference that we will be doing at the end of this year. There will be some focused discussions on the renewable energy investments in CPEC with the stakeholders, public-private dialogues, roundtables, on identifying the challenges and barriers faced by the private sector, and also the government from the government side, and how to look into identifying how to overcome the policies and plans, the challenges in the current policies and plans that could facilitate more uptake of renewable energy investments in Pakistan. There are some research projects, as I said, all this process will be research-based, evidence-based, so not just based on a small narrative on how we can go green, but it will be based on the evidence on the ground, on the case study, identifying the need to prioritize how to go green in our investments. So the research papers that we are focusing for this year are 2 research reports. One is on the green transition with a major focus on the renewable energy investments and CPEC. The second is we are developing guidelines, refinancing guidelines and framework for CPEC. There are going to be some policy briefs in terms of how we could learn from Chinese practices, how we could look into overcoming the challenges and the barriers in the corporate sector, how we could invest more in renewable energy resources. And the focus is mostly on solar and wind projects, just to clarify a little more. There's a concern in all over the globe about the large hydro investments as well. But looking into the numbers where the renewable energy resources, solar and wind, are proven to be the cheap energy sources now, as compared to the others, and also less ecologically harmful and environmentally more sustainable, will be more focusing on these two major investments. Okay, so you must be wondering that this looks like it's a wholesome kind of a plan. How are we going to engage? How we are envisioning the success of bringing CPEC Alliance to meet the objectives and to meet the research and activities that I have outlined. So, being at STPI, we have initiated the first ever network for clean energy transition in Pakistan, research and advocacy. We are very fortunate to have more than 70, 80 founding members from public, private, academia, financial institutions. The list is the list can be shared, and I think it's available on the website as well. So this is something that we have learned the last year, and so far we have been able to achieve so many success stories under which we are conducting the successful dialogues, the advocacy activities, the roundtables, and all. Then also STPI has initiated the establishment of Renewable Energy Parliamentary Caucus in collaboration with the Renewable Energy Coalition that operates in Pakistan and works together for upscaling the renewable energy in Pakistan. This is something that we had started with the previous government successfully, and it's going to launch very soon. It's inter-parliamentary. We are having some dedicated parliamentarians who are going to lead this caucus. Then both STPI and PCI are two founding members of well-enrolled initiative International Green Development Coalition, BRIDC. I mentioned this earlier that we are closely working with them. Then PCI's engagements with all Pakistan Chinese Enterprises Association. We had a CEO who had attended yesterday and provided his key remarks and a commitment towards this initiative. Also, STPI and PCI's advocacy with the Chinese investors, the stakeholders, and Pakistani policymakers are very strong to advocate for the green alternatives. Thank you. Thank you very much. May I request the guests to please come up with the. So this was a small background of this workshop of where we originated from, how this alliance will be continued for our first year, and how the activities will be unfolding and engagements will be unfolding in the upcoming 5 years. May I request some of the friends who are sitting behind, if you could move a little further, where if you could please, there are some seats at the front. Thank you. So this was a main introduction. I would like that before we begin the formal proceeding, we have some technical presentations on the renewable energy investments and green financing tools by our colleagues who will join us online. I would probably take a round of introduction from the table so that we know and get introduced to each other. So I'll begin with Ms. Najla.
Assalamualaikum everyone. This is Najla Vaid from Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. I'm heading the Primary Markets Approval and Development Department. Specifically with this event, we are here because we issued green bond guidelines. So we have a framework for green financing. Perhaps that will be discussed during the session, please.
Thank you, Ms. Nag. Thank you, Ms. Najib.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Wajul Hassan here from Renewable University and leading the Green Youth Movement, which is under Kamyab Juwan program. And we are volunteers for Green Youth project around 200. And we are continually working on climate change programs, eco-innovation and these things.
My name is Renewable. I'm from Pakistan and Mining Trust. We work towards globalization finance for impact in Pakistan. I personally led the carbon credit program. My name is Sharma. I am Ministry of Finance.
I'm working in the industrial corporation, and we are managing a project for encouraging monetary opportunities for clean energy. This is a new product, it's called PPC, and we have clean energy products in basic ones.
My name is Sitendra. I am the team leader of the CPEC. We have a dedicated team of who manages challenges across that's what about it.
And I'm working with the investment solution as a managing programs implementation. And this solution is a solution of 60 plus civil society organizations across Pakistan, and we are working on the green financing and the advocacy and lobbying with national financial institutions.
My name is Heather, and my name is Renewable. I am here to find some agriculture products which are used for green financing.
My name is Mohammed Ajaz. I'm from Global Change Impact Study Center. We research on all Ministry of Climate Change. We prepare the DIG country of Pakistan and nationally determined and finally updated reports.
My name is Yanni.
My name is Ramdeshiri, and I'm a student of international relations.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Mohammed Ajaz, student of international relations and economics.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Mohammed Ajaz. I'm from History and Industry Department.
I'm sorry, that sustainable development.
My name is Vikas and I am an intelligence. From those, I over the years.
I am the partner of the research institute.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Sakina, student of National University. Assalamualaikum. My name is Saira, and I am a student of National Institute of Modern Languages in Islam. Assalamualaikum. My name is Hira, and I am a student of National University. Islam.
My name is working as a project assistant.
It's not working. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today and for the kind introduction. Now I would like to move on to the first presentation we have on the green financing tools. We are joined by our esteemed guest, Dr. Christoph Wang from Fudan University, China. And he has been working extensively on developing green financing guidelines and also has a remarkable work done on these lines. And we have joined hands for this initiative as well. And he will be working very closely on this initiative, representing Chinese side and the stakeholders that are to be involved on their side. So thank you so much, Dr. Christoph, for joining. I know it's not the suitable time for you, but we are very pleased to have you today. So over to you for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Hina. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wonderful. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I'm absolutely excited, of course, about the Green CPEC Alliance that we've been working on for quite a bit to get this off the ground. And it's very exciting to see the progress. It's such a pleasure to be here with such an esteemed panel and so many esteemed guests. So my name is Christoph Nedopil. I do have a Wang as a last name, but Nedopil is usually the last name that I go with. Yeah, we'll share some slides if that's okay on the green finance in the CPEC and the BRI. And I will also give you a short introduction of who I am. Do the slides work well? Do you see the slide?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah, so green finance is the topic that I deal with every day, and particularly, of course, also for the BRI. So let me give you a short introduction of the Green Finance and Development Center and what we do at Fudan University. Then the kind of what types of green finance and the instruments of green finance, the policies of green finance in the Belt and Road Initiative, and that are, of course, also applicable to CPEC. Where are we going? And what are some key takeaways? So let me quickly start with a short introduction who I am. I'm a professor of economics at Fudan University. I'm also the director of the Green Finance and Development Center at Fudan University. I'm also visiting faculty at Singapore Management University, where I will be actually for the next couple of weeks. I'm with the BRI International Green Development Coalition, where I've worked extensively on green financing guidelines. I work with the Asian Development Bank, the UNDP, the G20, and many others on climate finance, green finance standards, and application. The Green Finance and Development Center is one of those green finance centers and leading green finance centers in China. We work in 4 different labs. The Green BRI lab really focusing on how can we accelerate policy, practice, advisory on greening the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese overseas investments. The second part is green innovation finance. And there's so much innovation going on, but we need much more in terms of energy, in terms of agriculture, and for transportation. How do we finance it? How do we mix public, private finance to scale up this green innovation? ESG lab, very much focused on the environmental and social risks and how we deal with them. And biodiversity finance lab, a very interesting and new topic and relevant topic for green finance, how to not only look at climate, but the whole biodiversity. And Pakistan is, of course, extremely rich in biodiversity, but also very much affected on climate. So these are the 4 labs that we work with in the Green Finance and Development Center. After this short introduction, I don't want to waste the time here. I want to dive right into the core, green finance, status and development for the BRI and CPEC. Now, of course, as Hina mentioned already at the beginning, green finance is extremely important for the Chinese signaling how they want to engage with its BRI over the next years to come. So we have here President Xi at the BRI forum in 2019, where he already said the Belt and Road is to promote green development. We may launch green infrastructure projects, green investments, and provide green financing to protect the earth, which we all call home. And he reiterated that statement at many times. Here, we have the Boao Forum in 2021, where he really strengthened some of the work that we are also engaged with. So he said we will build a closer partnership for green development. We could strengthen cooperation on green infrastructure, green energy, and green finance, and improve the BRI International Green Development Coalition. So Hina has mentioned that before, I have mentioned that as well, and the green investment principles for the Belt and Road development. So the BRIGC, the Belt and Road Initiative Green Development Coalition, and the GIP, the Green Investment Principles, are 2 of the core strategies that the Chinese regulators and sector, the financial sector, has to promote green finance in the BRI. Now, where are we in the BRI? And so in terms of what are we actually seeing in terms of financing and what needs to be greened? Here's an overview that we produce every half year in terms of the investments into the BRI. And we see that in the lower left, that between 2020 and 2021, of course, the investments and the engagement was relatively smaller compared to the previous years, about $50-something billion of engagement, which is construction and investments, less than half than in 2019. Most of the engagement, of course, goes into energy and transport, which are the 2 most important sectors for greening, because of course the energy sector and the transport sector are 2 of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and therefore climate change. Now, when we look particularly at Pakistan, we also see here the investment and construction trends in Pakistan over the years, and it's relatively stable at about $3 to $5 billion over the last years of different types of engagement. The peak was in 2015-16 with a lot of energy and transport investments, and that has tapered off the engagement. Overall, the focus with about 3/4 of the total investments is in the energy sector, followed by the transport sector. And what we are also seeing, if we want to green CPEC, we have to understand where we are right now. There is great progress. So in 2021 was the first year that China did not engage in any coal-fired power plants. And that's not only true for Pakistan, but it's true for the whole BRI. So that is when President Xi made the promise to not engage in coal-fired power plants abroad anymore. That was in September 2021. We already knew that this is going to happen, luckily, also from the numbers for all of 2021, even before he said it. And so we did not see any engagement also in Pakistan, in the coal sector, also not in gas and oil, so no fossil fuel sector, neither in investment nor in construction. Now, what we want to see more is not only hydro, which is a big part, but much more solar and wind. And so this is kind of where the greening of the CPEC needs to go. Hydro is important, but of course, there are also stranded asset risks due to climate change and changing weather and rain patterns. That solar and wind seems to be actually a more promising and long-term option for the energy transition. And when we think about where is China coming from and where is it going, here's the regulatory frameworks that we collected for the BRI from the different regulators. And what's really interesting that before 2020, China always said we have to apply host country rules, and host country rules, particularly in the BRI, means that sometimes the host country rules are not really strong in terms of environmental protection. So not very good for green development. And in 2020, and particularly 2022, we saw this extremely promising shift that the Chinese government says, let's use Chinese or international standards if we do overseas projects in order to protect the environment. Also, if the local environment or the local institutional legal environment is not so good, because in the end, if you want to do green, there is a standard for green. Let's do that for us and for the people on the ground. So this is really a massive shift that has taken place, also thanks to the work of the BRIGC. And there, in the latest opinions that were published in April, there's a clear timeline even that by 2021, of course, we have no more new coal. In 2025, we want the concept of green Silk Road to be recognized by all parties. And by 2030, the green BRI development pattern basically formed. And so when we published something together with BRIGC, we also had a similar prediction that by 2025, for example, all or 80% should be aligned with green project, and by 2030, 100% aligned with green projects. Now, how do we define green projects? This is very important. And this is where the green development guidance that I was very honored to be the lead author of, that was published in December 2020 and the implementation guide in October 2021, where we came up with 9 recommendations and the traffic light system. So the 9 recommendations you can read here on the left, but I will skip them now. It really addresses all project phases in terms of reporting, stakeholder engagement, and so on. Importantly, the traffic light system addresses all environmental dimensions: climate, biodiversity, and pollution. So this is one of the important things. Second, it has this very interesting 2-stage evaluation process where we say, how can we evaluate projects for their greenness? We have a project characteristics and we have the implementation characteristics. So the project characteristics is, for example, that a hydro dam, which Pakistan, of course, has several, can be green or can be red. But if it's not implemented right, it's of course very harmful for biodiversity. Now, very interesting, in Pakistan, of course, the hydropower plant was implemented with IFC performance standards, and therefore it would be considered not a red project because of the biodiversity risk, but a red-green project because it contributes by doing the right thing to a zero carbon emission energy system. So very clear kind of potential to upgrade projects. It was very important. Then we have kind of in this traffic light system, a list of 36 projects in all categories. So really a taxonomy showing where these projects fall in terms of the red, yellow, green, and what type of mitigation measures can be applied to really make sure that it's green. And then there's also a process for evaluating any type of projects beyond the original taxonomy. And it's applicable really across the whole project lifecycle for government, financial institutions, and enterprises. So everybody kind of has a responsibility in implementing this green financial tool. I will skip some slides. One of the important things that we also worked on was the big question of how can we accelerate green financing, not only from China, but with third-party cooperation. And this is something where we work together with the UK government and the NDRC, the National Development and Reform Commission, to analyze Chinese and international project financing mechanisms and how we can green them. And we found important differences between how the Chinese do project finance and how international partners do project finance. And based on these differences, we came up with 8 recommendations, again, along this project lifecycle, that starts with really focusing on high quality and transparent ways of project initiation, less so on government to government, which has a tendency to favor potentially kind of entrenched interests, and that are harder to do international project financing with. Because if, of course, the Chinese and the Pakistani government decide to do something together, it's very hard for international investors to come in. That might also lead into not ideal financing conditions. Then strengthen independent risk analysis and identification, strengthen the environmental and social impact assessment. So this is really something that we have learned very strongly also from the Chinese side, that this is a strong interest from them, where there's a lot of capacity needed, which is so far not necessarily there, and where they're really interested actually to work with international partners. Using multiple sources of financing, optimizing the use of guarantees. So international investors really despise sovereign guarantees for a simple reason that if the sovereign has issues, what happens with the project? And if sovereign guarantees are necessary, it's mostly in countries that have weaker institutional governance. And so there's kind of, ideally, you have a better SPV, the special purpose vehicle governance, rather than using sovereign guarantees. And then, of course, reporting and the environmental management system. These are all very important kind of recommendations that we worked out with the Chinese contractors and also worked out with the China International Contractors Association. So very important for third-party cooperation, also for CPEC. And finally, the green investment principles. The green investment principles is a set of 7 principles launched in 2018 with a number of financial institutions, both from China and internationally, having signed up to those. So different from the green development guidances, there's a government-initiated, supported project and kind of guidance. Green investment principles is in general more industry driven. We published in January this year the Accelerating Green BRI Investments, where we kind of compared and aligned the GIP, the Green Investment Principles, and the Green Development Guidance. And there was a project together with the BRIGC, with the Green Investment Principles, where I was also very honored to be the lead author of this work. Well, we aligned and compared these 2 initiatives and really found great additionality, but also important ways forward to improve both the application and broaden the application, ideally also for CPEC, and of course to include more partners. It's also really promising to see that Habib Bank has been very supportive, and particularly also for the green development guidance. So very strong cooperation from the beginning on with different Pakistani stakeholders. With that, I will also be happy to take any questions. There is, of course, a number of next steps that we need to do, both in China with the BRI partners, and particularly Pakistan. As Hina said, it is the most important partner for the BRI. It's a super important corridor. And so if we can manage a green CPEC, this is really a shining example for the rest of the BRI engagement. With that, I am of course open to questions or comments, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Presto, and we are extremely grateful for this great presentation, and thrilled to be working with you throughout the process, especially carrying the expertise that you already have on developing the green investment principles, the guidelines that you've already mentioned. That is basically what we need as an encouragement to be able to replicate as a best practice and the environmental standards with the host country like Pakistan to adopt and to lead this initiative forward. So thank you so much. We'll come back to the question, but we have a little keynote from our guest speaker, Dr. Hassan Dawood. He has an extensive knowledge and history of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, being the former project director of CPEC and currently working as the CEO of Renewable Board of Investment. We are also very grateful to him for joining all the way from Turkey, and he's not in Pakistan, but due to the strong commitment that he carries to support us for this initiative, he has been able to take some time out and enrich us through his speech. So Dr. Hassan, up to you. Over to you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, and I congratulate you and the Pakistan China Institute for this activity. Can you hear me and see me clearly?
Yes, Dr. Hassan.
Okay. Since yourself and our able speaker before me has actually highlighted the key pillars around the green initiative, I would just most essentially like to highlight some of the facts that we need to understand at this point. A is that, and there's an old, I think Qing Dynasty quote, Chinese quote, which says that you cannot fit in others' shoes, which means that you need to craft your own policies, you need to craft well-informed guidelines through which investors and also policymakers and officials who work on the CPEC projects need to understand how this is going to grow. So I will just take you a little back in 2013, and when this discussion around CPEC and the energy initiative started, because energy was at the forefront of all the discussion, despite the fact that we had other joint working groups, but clearly energy joint working group remained the most active initially till 2015, and thereafter when the project's implementation started. So initially when the project guidelines were prepared and how these projects would work within the overall energy framework of Pakistan, we had extensive discussion with our counterparts in Beijing, and also their teams came to Pakistan, and we had this with dialogue how Pakistan can, and because Pakistan at that time was also aware of its importance and also aware of the fact that once you start hydel projects and other infrastructure development projects, it has its ecological impact. So then when we were discussing with the Chinese,
Dr. Hassan, we can't hear you.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So clearly both, when we started this dialogue, I do not know where it got muted, but you know, our strive was for us to have a research-based policy development, advisory and action plan to build on ecological friendly and green China-Pakistan economy right from the very onset. I understand that there was discussion, there were some concerns, but while we were moving along on the path from 2015 till to date, those discussions, those warnings, those risks, those were highlighted, were clearly articulated in our overall understanding with the Chinese. And and therefore, our overall plan were made in a way that we started with hydel projects, we started with hybrid wind-based projects at Jhimpir, and then from there transitioned into a more robust, coal-based projects, and again now moving into hydro projects, which will inshallah be completed very soon. I think Suki Kenari and Karot and Kohala will all contribute to our energy. So two factors were there: A, to have a very sustainable energy basket, which can address our energy security concerns also. Secondly, address the scarcity of energy in as quick possible time, so that we can move into 2025 into the industrial development phase, because initial phase was addressing the bottlenecks, and then from 2025 moving into industrial development, and by 2030 have a sustainable model with ML1 and in place, so that our environment concerns are addressed. And even when we were working initially on ML1, the issue of environment vis-a-vis the current state as opposed to what we will get in 2030 when this project is completed were discussed. And I'm happy to also report that the concerns, the reason and objectivity for having a green CPEC had a top-down approach. Our leadership at all political, administrative level had a clear vision that we should address this. And now moving forward, I think these forums that we are holding now and your initiative of bringing in discussion around CPEC, green CPEC and green BRI is very important. Now that at the top policy making level, there is synergy of from both sides, both from China and Pakistan, synergy of ideas and concerns of how to take this forward. I think at operation level, we need to build our capacity. We need to be honest in our policy articulation, and we need to discuss this more often with concerns. I understand that when we build roads and when we build dams and bridges, environment gets impacted. But I think there are ways and means through which these risks can be mitigated very easily. And I would urge Hina, you and your team to give space for open discussion. Sometimes because when we address these issues, sometimes we do not go into areas because of various concerns. Do not worry about the narrative it builds, but worry about the good impact that we can all create, each one of us, through our discussion and debate, and involving experts like, because I saw in his name Wang also. So our colleague Mr. Wang also could help contribute, and not just the question answer session here, much beyond from here, and discussing the because when I used to ask these questions while sitting in planning commission and coordinating all these projects in the initial phases, we had the environment impact assessment, we have the standard format of doing that. But I think it has to come out of that standard format. It has to have the larger picture and the changes that is bringing very fast to the environment in our mind. I think we have experts available in Pakistan which need to be engaged more in the private sector also. We need to bring them on board and bring them closely in the stage that is coming now, because as I said, from here on till 2025, a lot of projects will be commissioned, especially hydro projects. We need to look at them, whether these projects, once completed, are as per the original design, and do they mitigate the concerns that will be highlighted in today's forum and in your capacity building. And if they don't, we need to go back to the drawing board again, because and look at how we can still function and improve. There will be more projects coming soon in the energy sector. I am happy also to report that in our discussions here in Turkey with the Prime Minister, with all the renewable came as one of the main investment focused discussion. And I would say that in 2 days of seminars, discussions, forums that we have had, even today, the main focus of both sides, leading investors here and there, were focused on having this, and focused on the phrase that I would just state here: creating more green jobs. Through these projects, we need to create more green jobs, and those green jobs will help contribute in improving the overall environment and also the efficiency of our projects. So lastly, again, I would say that this will not happen overnight. It is an incremental process. We will cross the river by touching each pebble, and this forum and this capacity building activity that we are doing should not, Hina, I would request, and because of my close association with STPI, should not be a normal tick in the block sort of activity. It should engage more, let people ask as many questions as they want. We will be available right throughout, and perhaps involve more experts at the political leadership level also, because from there we will get our inspirations and aspirations of how we will implement at the operational level. And similarly, the discussions with the Chinese also need to take place. They need to understand our concerns. They need to also look at how their government at the highest level, from President Xi Jinping to the Premier Li Keqiang, are showcasing China's ability for being a country which is leading from the front as far as green initiatives are concerned. I have been involved in some of these discussions, and we need to lastly set up clear timelines with action plans, how we will transition from where we are to where we want to be. In all our policies, I think we must have a clear review of the current situation and give timelines and targets of achieving these green initiatives. So thank you very much. This topic is so dear to me that I can speak more, but I think the most important aspect should be the interactive session that takes place, and then the policy guidelines that we can draw from here and recommend to the leadership. I will be closely following your seminars and this capacity building activity, and also request you that when you make your recommendations, do share them with us so that we can share them with the concerned quarters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan, and absolutely that's the objective and the aim of this workshop. So as we mark the activity for this capacity building, we are actually hoping to make it as interactive as possible. It's open for discussion. We're having two panel discussions as well, and we have question answers from the audience that are sitting here. And also we would like to engage with them in the future activities as well, so that we have a continued process of engaging with them through the recommendations, through the evidence that can be provided to the policy makers. So this is just a small step that we have taken, and we are envisioning much larger steps in taking it with the right set of timeline and targets. We are focusing on, of course, with your guidance and support. In here, I would also like to highlight that Dr. Hassan is also a visiting research fellow at the China Space Center of CPEC. So we are very honored to be supported by his expertise and knowledge, and we are with the extremely immense support. I think we would be able to achieve the objectives that we are aiming for. So thank you so much, and the floor is open for a couple of questions.
I would just like to highlight one thing, and I will state this in Urdu. याद रखिएगा कि ये जो process है industrial development का, because our end state is having a robust industrial development in Pakistan. इसके लिए while we highlight these concerns also, we should also be cognizant of the fact कि हमें we need to become economically stable. We need to have fast industrial revolution, development, and also make our country rich. And in this process, हमें हर तरह के concerns को highlight भी करना है, उनको showcase भी करना है, but also need to work on an industrial exercise जिसके नतीजे में हम जल्दी ये सब कुछ अचीव कर सकें, I believe. और उसको कैसे करना है, कौन से रिस्क आएंगे, उनको कैसे मिटिगेट करना है, each one of us need to contribute.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. Rightly said. If you have any questions from the audience, kindly.
Shared policy and also the topic we're talking about green financing is somewhat very close to my heart, and also we as said in my introduction that we're working for green financing for purely for green energy projects. For green energy project, the most important is the regime in terms of the rules and regulations, government regulations, and the financial regulations. One of the biggest setback that we see the 3 months back is that the State Bank of Pakistan abolished 6% financing facility, which was very conducive environment financing in the renewable energy that has been abolished. Now, I would ask from your board that can you take this forward with authorities, with the State Bank of Pakistan, the Ministry of Finance, and other relevant authorities, that this is something that was imperative for the growth of renewable energy in Pakistan.
Yes.
But we also met with some government departments, and you mentioned about this. And they said it's a huge challenge. I said it's not a challenge, it's a disaster. This is something that your board, this is my recommendation that your board will take this forward with the authorities to extend this 6% financing for renewable energy projects. Otherwise, renewable energy projects will be getting financing at 20% or 16%, which would be really, which would not make these conducive.
Thank you so much, Hamad. And we have a representation from the State Bank of Pakistan just in the next panel discussion, and we'll be, of course, putting up this question. We would like to listen on how this abolished financing facility could be taken as discouraging the investments, how it could be looked at from their perspective. We also have Ms. Tajia there from Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. So, of course, it would be good to hear your thoughts on this. So, any other question from the first of all, from the audience for Dr. Christoph or Dr. Hassan? Please, yes. And I would request the participants to kindly introduce yourself and then please question.
My name is Engineer Snapche. I come here on the way from Inshallah to the neighbor and green financial guidance for the college. I was also present yesterday's event for the launch of this great initiative. I would like to thank SBI for inviting us, especially the young companies and the youngsters here to be included in such a fruitful session and investigating workshops. Furthermore, about green financing and the CPEC and the word of green, which is handed down to the CPEC. I will be asking a few questions regarding CPEC, the Chinese concerned people as well as SBI and the Pakistani stakeholders, Mr. Hassan Dawood Saab as well. The first, my question is, CPEC is meant to be a project which will provide employment opportunities to the students, youngsters here, as well as it will be, be a great step towards the economic prosperity of Pakistan. But currently, most of I'm looking there are students and youngsters, but CPEC has just begun from the last few years. and still youngsters are waiting for jobs. We cannot see still now, there is no any, output on whatever the student and the youngster want to get graduate, especially. I'm also engineer and activist, and presiding an engineering association all over Pakistan by the name Peach. We have huge concern over the CPEC regarding jobs for us. The word green is used, but no green skills is there in our youth. Our youngsters are deprived of these things. They just get degree from the institution. Whenever they come to the market, the CPEC projects are demanding something else. Either the system is not, including youngsters in these projects. Many of our Chinese brothers, they are coming, they are leading, but our youngsters cannot take a part in that. So we want the Chinese authority and Pakistani stakeholders to just raise the voice of engineers. Let them come and let them be the stakeholder of the CPEC project, because Pakistan is a country which will prosper, and these youngsters will be the future leaders and the future stakeholders of the CPEC project. So it's my request, and this is a question for the policymaker, that up to how much extent you are, considering youth as a stakeholder in the CPEC project.
Thank you so much.
Secondly, sorry.
So you have another question?
Yeah. Secondly, I'm social entrepreneur running my own social enterprise and Greenfield Universal Network. And I have initiated this project to equip the youngsters with green skills and make them able to get green jobs. But as far as by this concern, I'm not getting any attention from the government of Pakistan for the skill development and green skills for the youth of Pakistan. So this is another big point we should consider by SPPI in the policy on the policy making level in the government of Pakistan. And I'm thankful to Security Exchange Commission of Pakistan, which has taken a great initiative for making the system online, and it was very easier for me to register my company from Peshawar. So these are some concerns of the answer. I would be glad if you people take it on the serious note. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saddam. I'll take another question from their side, and then I'll request the panelists to kindly respond. Do you have any questions? Sir? Yeah.
Thank you for highlighting green financing overview. As you know, Pakistan is an agriculture country, and agriculture almost contributes 20% in GDP. So my question is that what are the green investment in agriculture, or which we can use in Pakistan, or is there any green agriculture product which can be used in CPEC route, or how this CPEC and agriculture can help Pakistan?
Thank you so much. Dr. Hassan, would you like to respond to the first question in terms of how CPEC has brought prospects for the job creation of local students, especially building up green skills? So, would you have any comment?
Yeah, surely. First of all, I need to, as I said, let me be very candid on this. First of all, आप ये ज़हन में रखिए, and since do we have a foreigner in this discussion amongst the?
Yes, we have Dr. Prester.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but amongst your participants.
No.
Okay, then let me be very vocal and very candid in what I'm going to say now. So, because these are some frequently asked questions, and naturally we are going through a transition, and we are at a stage where these questions need to be addressed. Please remember that CPEC is a stimulus to our economic growth. It is going to contribute to the overall development and economic agenda of the country, but it is not the economic and development agenda of our country. We develop our country through our public sector development plan. We develop our country through the economic agenda of the government, whether they are yearly plans or 5-yearly plan or 25-yearly plans. And based on those plans, CPEC contributes and addresses some of the challenges that we have, like A is creating the rural-urban synergy. And I will highlight them in the order that I think that they address the concerns of the youth and also create job creation. So now let me give you one example. Since I'm based in KP and look at investment, just the road between Hakla to DI Khan is creating enormous opportunities for us in terms of investment. I am now very closely involved with 2 private sector SEZ. I'm not talking about government initiatives now. I'm talking about private sector SEZs too. One by Fatma Group and the other by Sapphire Group. And they are creating SEZs around construction industry, cement industries, and these are 600 acre of land and 300 acre of land respectively, in which these SEZs are being built. Just one road, creating these opportunities for investors to go and explore an area where we have hardworking human resource, which is cheap also and has the kind of expertise that we require at this stage. Naturally, again, the benefit that we are accruing through this, I have seen the transition that has happened in Gwadar because I was involved in the Gwadar master plan. When its road linkage with Quetta were developed, our distance of over 18 hours were shortened to 8 hours. People were looking for jobs in Gwadar while belonging to Quetta. So these are creating opportunities. I now see people looking and exploring opportunities in DI Khan, in DG Khan, because the cost of land is less and these road networks are happening through CPEC. I have seen this transition also happen when we were working on the KKH project and its connectivity from Burhan. Again, a lot of economic activity taking place and creating opportunities for jobs. This is the fact on ground that we have created about 70,000 jobs, out of which 69% are being run by the Pakistani, and especially in infrastructure, about 85 to 90% are by Pakistanis, because we have the kind of expertise. A lot of people came back from Middle East to work in CPEC projects. And also, what I am looking at now is the future in terms of our optical fiber connectivity. I participated in BOW Forum and their discussion was on Avatar. There was discussion on digital transformation and how these projects. Please remember, when CPEC will be completed in 2030, and I hope it goes beyond, but say as per the long-term plan which exists now, China is going to have 6G then. And if the speed of decision-making, the speed of information would be at least 1,000 times faster to what we have now. So this is the kind of challenge you have for creating jobs. I think it is creating jobs, but remember, it is just a project within the overall economic growth. So the overall development agenda of the government, the overall development plan of the government should be robust enough to create these jobs. अच्छा, अब हमने क्या करना है students and people entering job market, especially for engineers, I'm saying, because people in financial market, people concerned to finance, accounting, and other similar areas are getting opportunities. Challenge for engineers is huge because the technologies are changing, because the way of doing work is changing, and there is a cultural aspect of doing these jobs. Please याद रखिएगा कि अब जो वो boundaries थी ना jobs के लिए, employment के लिए, information के लिए, वो अब खत्म होती जा रही हैं. अगर हम बाहर के मुल्कों में जाके जॉब कर सकते हैं तो इंशाल्लाह ऐसा टाइम भी आएगा when we have that kind of environment where people will come from abroad and work here. उस वक्त आपके लिए मजीद challenge बढ़ेगा. But at this time, the only challenge is to look at entrepreneurial activities that these engineers can do and contribute to CPEC. अभी जो मैं देख रहा हूँ वो अभी तक CPEC में जॉब्स क्रिएट हो रही हैं जिसमें जाके एम्प्लॉयमेंट लोग ढूंढते हैं और करते हैं, लेकिन उसका जो हमें टर्शरी सपोर्ट और उसके ज्यादा हमें जो एंटरप्रेन्योरल सपोर्ट चाहिए वो नहीं उस तरह मिलती. गवर्नमेंट ही इन्वॉल्व रहती है फ्रॉम बोथ साइड, स्टेट ओन्ड एंटरप्राइजेस इन्वॉल्व रहती हैं. अगर आप थोड़ा सा वेंचर कर सकें प्राइवेट सेक्टर में और आइडेंटिफाई कर सकें, क्योंकि हमें फॉर एग्जांपल एट टाइम्स वो रिसोर्स नहीं मिल रही होती जो कि शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए चाहिए होती है, और फिर इवन कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग एक्सरसाइजेस करानी होती हैं हमने व्हाइल वर्किंग इन दिस प्रोजेक्ट्स, और उसके लिए हमें राइट ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, यंग ह्यूमन रिसोर्स नहीं मिल रही होती. एक तरफ आपका कंसर्न है कि आपको जॉब्स उस तरह नहीं मिल रही होती, एक तरफ गवर्नमेंट का कंसर्न होता है कि हमें राइट ह्यूमन स्किल्स वो नहीं मिल रही होती. तो जो गैप है उसको एड्रेस करने के लिए आई थिंक टेफ्टा जो है या नेफ्टेक है या हमारे जो जितने भी टेवेट्स हैं उनको थोड़ा सा इंटरेक्ट करना पड़ेगा. अच्छा, जहां तक चाइनीज के साथ, क्योंकि मैं बहुत क्लोजली काम करता हूं उनके साथ, दैट्स पार्ट ऑफ माय प्रोफेशनल एक्मेन आल्सो, ऐसी कोई खास उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं होती जो हम कहें कि जी हम उसके अंदर नहीं जा सकते बिकॉज कि उनकी पर्टिकुलर कोई रिक्वायरमेंट है. दे जस्ट वांट प्रोडक्टिव ह्यूमन रिसोर्स. और मैं आपसे बिल्कुल स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड बात करूंगा कि मैं चूंकि चाइना के अंदर भी 5 साल प्रोजेक्ट्स कर रहा था, उसके बाद यहाँ पर आके CPEC पे काम किया, जो चीज लैक कर रही है वो आई थिंक जो प्रोडक्टिविटी एस्पेक्ट है उसको इम्प्रूव करने की जरूरत ऑफ द ह्यूमन रिसोर्स. हमारी प्रोडक्टिविटी विजावी जो हमारे काउंटर पार्ट्स होते हैं जो चाइना से आके यहाँ पे जॉब करते हैं, उनकी जो मैन आवर के अंदर एफिशिएंसी होती है वो थोड़ी सी सुपीरियर होती है. और इसको हमें एज यंगस्टर्स, एज somebody who has aspirations to do wonders at this stage, ये देखने की जरूरत है कि कैसे हम उसको compete कर सकें. जहाँ तक आगे जाएगा CPEC, आई थिंक के इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट रशाकाई में जिस तरह अभी हमारे पास आ रही इंडस्ट्री, हमें, मैं आपको KP की बात बताऊं कि एट टाइम्स हमें ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, और मैं इसको CPEC से रिलेट नहीं कर रहा, जस्ट एक नॉर्मल इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट या फैक्ट्री ओनर्स को ह्यूमन रिसोर्स नहीं मिल रही होती, और वो हमें अप्रोच कर रहे होते हैं कि हमें आप कभी पंजाब से ले दें, कभी आप सिंध से ले दें, या इवन अब्रॉड से भी वो मंगाने को रेडी होते हैं. आपने देखा है कि श्रीलंकन आर कमिंग एंड वर्क. तो आपको थोड़ा सा इस लिहाज से जो ट्रेंड्स हैं वो आइडेंटिफाई करने चाहिए, और बड़ा आसान होता है. आप देखें कि कौन कौन सी जॉब्स आ रही हैं रेगुलर, एडवर्टाइज हो रही हैं रेगुलर, और उसके अंदर आप कैसे सिंक अपने कर सकते हैं अपनी प्रोफेशनल एबिलिटी को. जहाँ तक एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर का, आई थिंक आई एम हैप्पी टू रिपोर्ट कि अब बहुत ज्यादा विजावी सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ की तरफ CPEC बढ़ा है. Why? Because we need sound food security. We do not accrue the right kind of yield from our fields that we have. और इसके लिए चाइनीज की तरफ से बहुत अच्छी कमिटमेंट है in order to support us in providing the right kind of knowledge first. क्योंकि आपके पास नॉलेज होगी तो फिर आप किसी चीज की डिमांड कर सकते हैं ना. समटाइम्स हमारी डिमांड भी वेल क्राफ्टेड नहीं होती बिकॉज दे आर नॉट बेस्ड ऑन नॉलेज बेस्ड डिसीजन मेकिंग. तो इसलिए अब चाइनीज की तरफ से जो बहुत अच्छी सपोर्ट आ रही है, हमारा एक स्ट्रेटेजिक एग्रीमेंट भी उनके साथ हो गया एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में, विच एड्रेसेस एनवायरमेंट कंसर्न, विच एड्रेसेस फूड सिक्योरिटी. और मैं आपको सिर्फ KP का बता दूं कि जिस तरह मर्दान के अंदर और कुछ एरियाज के अंदर हम रेड चिलीज में चाइनीज के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, को ब्रांडिंग और को मार्केटिंग पे इसके साथ काम कर रहे हैं. प्राइवेट सेक्टर की बहुत अच्छी इन्वॉल्वमेंट हो रही है. आई नो फातिमा ग्रुप, मैं आई डू नॉट लाइक टू कोट एंटरप्राइजेज नेम, बट स्टिल फातिमा ग्रुप इज वर्किंग वेरी क्लोजली विद चाइनीज इन कॉर्पोरेट फार्मिंग एंड कॉर्पोरेशन फार्मिंग आल्सो, cooperate and corporate. So in both aspect Chinese are providing us. पंजाब के अंदर बहुत एक्टिवली इन्वॉल्वमेंट हो रही है इन दी एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर, और वो एरियाज जो कि इवन राइस के अंदर हम बहुत एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं ताकि हमारी जो वाटर स्केसिटी है उसको भी एड्रेस किया जा सके। इसके अंदर दो चीजों का हमें जरूर ख्याल रखना होगा कि जब हम जो एग्रीकल्चर डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन फार्म्स बना रहे हैं थ्रू सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट एजेंडा, जिसके लिए हमें चाइनीज साइड से $1 बिलियन की ग्रांट मिली और एग्रीकल्चर उसके फोर फ्रंट में है, उसके अंदर हमने बहुत ही एक्सेसिबिलिटी प्रोवाइड करनी होगी टू आर लेस एजुकेटेड फार्मर्स। और इस सिलसिले में हम चाइनीज से क्लोजली बात करें, क्योंकि पहले कल्चरल बैरियर है, फिर लैंग्वेज बैरियर है, और फिर यहाँ पर नॉलेज एजुकेशन का बैरियर भी है। तो इन चीज़ों को एड्रेस करते हुए और ऐसे सेमिनार से इनपुट लेते हुए क्लोजली, मेरा ख्याल है इस वक्त मैं आपको फेयरली बता सकता हूँ कि जिन चीज़ों पे, 3 चीज़ों पे बहुत ज़्यादा एंगेजमेंट है चाइनीज के साथ। A is the agriculture sector, B is the industrial development and investment attraction, and C is the blue economy growth. और मैं आपके जो यंगस्टर ने पीछे सवाल किया, आई थिंक एक फोकस, चूंकि हम जरा ऑल्दो वी आर अ मैरीटाइम नेशन, लेकिन हमारी थिंकिंग थोड़ी सी लैंड लॉक्ड है। तो मैं लास्टली यहाँ पे जरूर रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा आप सबसे कि जो यूथ है वो मैरीटाइम सेक्टर को, ब्लू इकोनॉमी को देखे। उसके अंदर इस वक्त हमारे पास ह्यूमन रिसोर्स सिर्फ 10% है फ्रॉम द एक्चुअल रिक्वायरमेंट वी हैव, और अपने कंफर्ट जोन से थोड़ा सा बाहर निकल के इन चीजों को एक्सप्लोर करें। सो आई थिंक ये हो जाएगा। एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर, आई थिंक अगर आपकी भी कोई रिकमेंडेशंस है, इट विल रीच द राइट काइंड ऑफ ईयर्स एंड आईज ASAP, क्योंकि इस वक्त बहुत ज्यादा फोकस है, क्योंकि कंसर्न बहुत बड़ा है, बहुत बड़ा कंसर्न है। और कोविड ने जहां बहुत खराबियां दुनिया के अंदर लेकर आए, एक अच्छी ये चीज देकर आए कि हमारी जो फूड की कंसर्न्स हैं, जो फूड और एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर की वीकनेसेस हैं, वो बहुत ज्यादा आ गई। और वो इकोनॉमीज जिनके पास सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ थी एंड ऐसी ग्रोथ थी कि इन ऑर्डर टू फीड एंड प्रोवाइड इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ, वो सस्टेन कर सकी। तो ये चीज हमें क्लियरली एट द गवर्नमेंट लेवल हाईलाइट हो चुकी है। और इसमें जो हमारी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फूड सिक्योरिटी है वो काम कर रही है। आई थिंक हमारे थोड़ा सा अगर किसी एरिया में PARC जो है उसको जरा आप लोगों की तरफ से प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ एंगेज जरा ज्यादा करना चाहिए। उनका गवर्नमेंट के साथ, चाइनीज गवर्नमेंट के साथ बहुत अच्छी एंगेजमेंट है। चले उधर तो गवर्नमेंट होती है, इधर आई थिंक PARC को थोड़ा सा दे शुड स्टेप आउट एंड एंगेज विद प्राइवेट सेक्टर मोर। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. I think that explains a lot. There's a lot of information that we have received in terms of the upcoming prospects in agriculture sector and the blue economy, and how we could promote all these sectors in terms of increasing the human resources and the capacity and the productivity of the human resources. So I think this discussion is really interesting, and if we continue, I will quickly move on to the next session where we'll be having more chances to have your questions. So please, I hope you understand in the interest of time. So the first panel we are doing is on green financing guidelines. And I'm happy to announce some of the key distinguished speakers who have joined us for this panel. So Ms. Nadia Abed, she's an Additional Director, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. We have Dr. Sajid Ali Javed. He's a Deputy Executive Director of Research at STPI, the economist. Then we are joined by Mr. Irfan from State Bank of Pakistan, from the Finance Department, and Mr. Ali Hassan, the Head of Sustainable Initiatives, JS Bank. So we are very pleased to have you, ma'am. I would like to begin with Ms. Nadia on her perspective on today's talk, where we have been discussing since morning in terms of how crucial it is for Pakistan to work on these green financing guidelines for CPEC energy projects. Over to you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to appreciate STPI and Park China specifically for this alliance and having this session here. I generally believe that such kind of consultative sessions bring and highlights the most crucial elements that need to be addressed for prosperous and successful implementation of such projects. So I once again congratulate we need to understand few of the things that specifically with reference to the BRI, the Belt Road Initiative, and if we talk about these projects, these can be classified as kind of an infra projects majorly. So if we look into the infra project space, they generally require larger investments and they have a very longer gestation period. So we have to be savvy of the fact that who can be the investors in such space, what exact regulatory requirements can be or are attracted for successful implementation of this. So if we talk specifically in terms of, again, I'm representing the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan here. So if we talk specifically the role SCCP can play in such environments and in such projects would be, I can think of either getting the equity investments or in terms of the debt financing thing. So if we talk about the equity investments, then we do have the REIT framework, the Real Estate Infrastructure Trust framework that provides the unit holders to contribute for the real estate infrastructure projects. Here, I would like to again highlight that if we talk specifically on the REIT structure, it doesn't specifically classify, discriminate the green or the brown projects. So the green projects can be and can become the part of the REIT framework. Again, if someone is interested, then the REIT regulatory framework has been harmonized. It has been kind of addressed for the problems that remained, that were kind of the hindrance in the growth of the REIT sector. But now with those hindrances removed, the regulatory framework is harmonized, people can come and bring the green financing projects through that framework. SCCP has also developed green bond guidelines. Again, the purpose is just to encourage, we do have the framework. The framework existed since somewhere down the road, if I say 5 to 10 years back. It just re-emphasized that green financing is now the need. People can come and bring their green financing instruments that can be classified as green bonds. So for green bonds, the specific purpose has to be the green financing, and the case that Dr. Hina referred was majorly the wind power and the solar projects that can easily be classified as renewable energy projects, and the Belt Road Initiative projects that can be classified here. So it provides the guidelines on how a company, or for that matter, any entity that wants to initiate, can launch a green bond. The only requirement is, and majorly a lot of that is voluntary reporting. Nothing is kind of mandatory, but definitely when you involve public funds, it requires some sort of confidence that you need to provide to the public. So for that very reason, it is ideal to have a reviewer and auditor in place who can just highlight that the proceeds that are collected are used for the same purpose, that is green. And again, we need to create, even before the issuance of the instruments or before the launching of the units for raising the equity or the debt financing, we need to launch awareness among the stakeholders that it is important that we contribute towards our own earth, our own planet. If we do not, we won't be able to survive here. I have just summarized kind of things, but over to you, Hina. Thank you.
Thank you. Very informative, Ms. Taji. And I think I would like to just quickly go on to Dr. Sajid Amin Javed, who also has an experience in researching around the green bonds and the perspective that he thinks would be important for the discussion happening today, especially in the context of CPEC energy projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hina. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Sajid.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to open my cam. Actually, no light here since morning. So I'll be just.
No problem, Dr. Sajid.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me really start by commending sort of this initiative. It's really much needed and very, very timely. Generally, this is taken as a routine sentence. But when it comes to green financing and particularly greening the CPEC, this is really in a literal meaning, much needed and very timely initiative that SDPI has taken under your guidance and leadership, Dr. Hina. Many congratulations to your team and SDPI as well. I think greening CPEC is important at least for two reasons. The one is that this is the largest energy investment portfolio in Pakistan, and the transportation and other infrastructure as well. So greening CPEC means actually greening the largest energy portfolio and infrastructure development and transportation in Pakistan. So this is really a big sort of discussion that you have started, and we look forward that gradually it moves towards the implementation on how to green, and it starts then happening, that greening. Greening CPEC is also important for China and the center that is your partner in this alliance, because it can be a success story to green the BRI across the globe. So it's really important in this context, that greening CPEC initiative that you have really started. Coming back to green financing, it's really encouraging that there are now discussions going on green financing, and they are getting more frequent, more systematic, and more strategic over the time actually. And it's also encouraging that Pakistan, there is a sort of appetite for green financing, and both from the investor side and from the users as well. And if we see in 2021, actually the BAPDA has already reached to the global green financing market through green Eurobonds to secure roughly $500 million from the international market. While many good things have been already been said by Christopher, Hassan Dawood Saab, and other colleagues. So let me just make 2 to 3 points quickly in today's discussion, and that may be sort of the agenda that may be in short to medium term going forward. And one of them is that we have to engage private sector actively, and this will require sort of minimizing the risks around green financing, green products, and the green services. I mean, if we have to have the private sector engaged, so we need to reduce the risks around those products and services which we want to sort of bring into the finance market actually. But particularly one point that we have already been in sort of discussion with Pakistan Stock Exchange has a very critical role in promoting green financing actually. In addition to State Bank of Pakistan and SECP, as we have the participants from there. I'm sure if you have it already, otherwise I would like that we sort of engage Pakistan Stock Exchange very actively on this green financing initiative, because now there is a growing trend of sustainable stock exchanges. And we had a discussion with Dr. Shamshad a couple of months back that Pakistan Stock Exchange needs gradually moving towards sustainable stock exchange. There is now a sort of priority focus on green bonds, green tradings, green share tradings. And we have suggested Pakistan Stock Exchange that they need to sort of develop a corner for green shares, green trades. And there is an appetite. And I think I can share more details once we sit together. But just for the sake of time, I'll just leave this on. Final point. I think if we see the global sort of efforts on green financing, and particularly in context of Pakistan, so there are 4 areas that I think your team and the alliance has to focus on. And let me give it in a sort of reverse order. I think the top priority that is one of the sort of speaker from SCCP also highlighted, that we have to have a kind of strengthen the green dialogue in Pakistan. Particularly, there are some experts talking about, but to bring it a mass scale attention where investor and issuers can sit together. There needs to be a dialogue series of what you can call it, a green dialogue or whatever you call it, bringing in together the investors and the issuers and the policy legislatures and the policy dialogues. So I think raising awareness is the first building block. And I think your today's event is the first a big step in this direction. But I think there can be a series of green dialogues that SDPI and your alliances partners can take on. But I think if we have to go for green financing, we have to strengthen environmental disclosures. And for this, I think we need a serious work on guidelines, the training and the capacity building for green reporting and other things. And I think SECP can be a very sort of important partner in this one, where we're deciding firms' disclosures and reporting can be aligned with more in terms of environmental disclosures. Thirdly, I think we need a sort of crash program, sort of literacy programs on green financing market actually itself. There is a low literacy on this one. How do they work? So market education, standards and benchmarking will need a sort of detailed discussion if we have to really have a large scale green financing market, which can help sort of promote green financing of CPEC and beyond CPEC as well. And finally coming, once we do there, then we will be coming to sort of promote kind of providing a conducive environment where we can then sit on how to promote, design and promote green products and services. Particularly green banking will be very critical. And I think our colleagues from State Bank of Pakistan will be speaking most probably on it, because due to the risks, which are not really, unfortunately, climate change is not taken as a systematic risk in our banking sector reporting. There is some, but that is at infant stage. That needs to be very much incorporated as a risk. And then similarly, reporting and trading, these can be combined to sort of provide a conducive environment, which can help design and implement affordable, acceptable, and quality green products and services. I hope I have brought much to your plate moving forward in medium to long term. I once again congratulate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This mic is not working. Thank you so much, Dr. Sajid. And talking about green banking and green products, I would swiftly navigate to Mr. Ali Hassan, who is heading the Sustainable Initiatives at GS Bank. And we have just seen that GS Bank is the first financial institution to be aggregated by the Green Climate Fund, which is the world's largest climate fund. And with many organizations now making effort for the portfolio transition from traditional to clean energy, I would like to know that how the GS Bank and the GCF would facilitate the private sector's operations in emerging economies like Pakistan for limiting and reducing the emissions, and also to ensure to provide the green services, the green products, and to deliver and to accelerate transition towards these clean energy projects. So over to you, Ali. Is he there? Okay, I just saw him online. Probably we can wait. Or before we wait, I think this question could also be relevant to Mr. Irfan from State Bank of Pakistan. And I think I would like to couple a question from my colleague earlier as well. So Ali is with us. Ali, if you could hear us. Can you hear us?
This is Irfan, madam.
Okay.
Dr. Hina, this is Irfan from
Yes,
State Bank.
yes, yes. So, over to you, please.
Okay, so thank you so much, SDPI, for inviting me as a panelist in this all-important capacity building session on green financing guidelines for the CPEC energy projects. Uh, Given global climate risk, I believe it is very important to create such awareness and knowledge sharing on green financing. But before I begin, I really second Dr. Sajid's the statement regarding with the work that PSX needs to do regarding an ESG index. I think an ESG index is really important for Pakistan because it will allow companies to be ranked on their environmental, social, and governance practices, and thus allowing international investors, foreign investors, to bring a much needed foreign direct investment into Pakistan, because increasingly we are seeing investors, they are not only concerned about the profits, but they're also concerned about how their investments are going to affect the environment and social and governance practices. So I really am hopeful that something positive can come up from that side. So sustainability has become a mainstream in many sectors, including the financial industry. So financing for promoting sustainable development is a need for the hour. And Dr. Hina, you're absolutely right that to make transition to a sustainable or a green economy, we have to create an enabling regulatory environment which can make these green sectors an attractive opportunity for investors and businesses. So to overcome this challenge and to create a facilitative environment, State Bank of Pakistan, we have taken both developmental and regulatory initiatives for the adoption of green banking and sustainable banking practices. On the developmental side, I would like to highlight our renewable energy scheme, which one of your participants has also highlighted. Uh, Really, this has been an eye opener for us as well, because just post COVID, we have seen a massive increase in demand for the renewable energy scheme. It was launched in 2019. It's going to expire on 30th June 2022. We are in discussion of extending the scheme for another period of 2 years, but being a policy making institution, we have to look at things holistically. So we are in discussions, but rest assured, all those we have instructed the banks that if they have given financial sanctions, or they have taken, or they have done financial closure before 30th June 2022, they can disperse the funds if they are falling after 30th June 2022. So from that side, the banks are covered. Just to give you give you some numbers, the data that we have for March 2021, more than 81 billion is outstanding in our renewable energy scheme, and we have financed more than 1,500 projects with a cumulative capacity of adding 1,400 megawatts of electricity to the national grid, and all this at a very subsidized rate of 6% for the end user. So apart from this, which was the developmental initiative, the regulatory initiative that we have undertaken is the issuance of green banking guidelines in 2017. What these guidelines basically do is that they set out expectations for integrating the consideration of ESG risk and performance into banks' lending activities. These GBGs run in parallel to other guidelines, such as Code of Corporate Governance and CSR voluntary guidelines that were issued by SCCP in 2013. The GBGs comprise of the four main sections, but the section that is relevant to today's today's workshop is the green business facilitation part of it. As we are all aware that Pakistan has affirmed its commitment to the 2030 agenda for sustainable development by adopting SDGs at its own national development agenda. So to help achieve the outcome envisaged in this agenda, the green business facilitation section of the GBGs encourages banks and DFIs to identify green and environmental friendly financing products and markets, such as energy efficiency, carbon markets, green mortgages, etc. So these guidelines also encourage banks and DFIs to explore international funding options like UN's Green Climate Fund, which you referred to earlier. And I'm very happy to share that two financial institutions, actually, JS Bank and NRSP, have been accredited by GCF, which is the world's largest climate fund. This accreditation is important because it is going to open up avenues for financial institutions to avail subsidized funding in the form of loans, grants, and guarantees for environmentally friendly projects. It is also pertinent to highlight that this particular section of the green banking guidelines is aligned with a few SDGs as well, like Goal 6, Goal 7, Goal 9, Goal 11, and Goal 13, which is about climate action. So I highly encourage the participants to go through the green banking guidelines. There's a lot of information in the guidelines for the interested participants. So we are doing this. So after issuance, even though they're not mandatory in nature, but we have been taking status reports from banks on a quarterly basis, and I'm very happy to share that the response is quite positive. All banks have established a green banking office through which they can, coordinate green banking related activities within that bank. Many have also have approved green banking policies from their board of directors, which shows a commitment from the senior management. And at the same time, they have developed the important environmental risk management procedures, which Dr. Sajid earlier also alluded to, and are undertaking measures for facilitation of green businesses and reduction of their own impact on the environment. Now, as far as CPEC is concerned, you all know that Pakistan is one of the most crucial part of the BRI. There are numerous infrastructure projects going on under BRI, and in fact, China's BRI investment report states that Pakistan is in the top 3 most countries that have received most investments with a major focus on the energy sector. So all these infrastructure projects in Pakistan will have to comply with environmental regulations and regulated by EPAs. And moreover, multilateral organizations, which are also part of the BRI funding, they also have very stringent policies related to environmental considerations. We all know that China's initiatives underscore the importance of responding to climate change, leading towards climate resilience and environmental sustainability. As one of the largest economies in the world, China has adopted a number of policies, measures, and actions to tackle climate change. I believe CPEC provides an incredible opportunity for Pakistan's financial industry to learn from China's expertise in areas related to environmental, social, and governance practices. To conclude, I will say that scaling up green finance can help increase sustainability and resilience. And central banks, along with other financial institutions and relevant stakeholders, can play a very important role to mainstream green finance. In this context, initiatives like this particular capacity building workshop are very instrumental for both demand side players as well as the supply side stakeholders to play their due role in transitioning towards net zero and climate resilient economy. Thank you so much.
Into the investments and then how financial institutions has already been sensitized on economic progress, and I think it's incremental. I would like to head back to if we have Ali Hassan from the GS Bank case. I can see you now. So Ali, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the question I proposed earlier. So we have just recently seen that the GS Bank is the first financial institution in Pakistan to be aggregated by GCF, Green Climate Fund. And many organizations now making change to for the portfolio transition from traditional to the clean energy. How do you see GS Bank and the GCF to facilitate private sector entities and the corporations in Pakistan for overcoming this sustainability and climate change issues?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to apologize for not for disconnecting earlier. Had some internet issues at my end. So that's a very interesting question that you've asked about the Green Climate Fund and how JS Bank and the GCF relationship is working out at the moment, and how do we see it in the future. So as far as now, as far as the current situation is concerned, we are perhaps the only financial private sector institution, along with NRSP, we are the two institutions in Pakistan which have an accreditation from the Green Climate Fund. This is a very long and cumbersome process to be able to get accreditation. And I would like to connect some of the things that Mohammed Irfan had mentioned earlier with regarding to the environmental risk and the green banking guidelines that have been published and adopted by a lot of commercial banks, which actually were sort of the principles of our relationship with the Green Climate Fund. So just to give you some context, we adopted those policies and we are regularly updating the State Bank about our green initiative and reporting on all those frameworks. Similarly to that, we also got accreditation, which involved following the policies of the Green Climate Fund. Now, this policy or this decision actually stemmed from our board members. Our board members look at this initiative very strongly and foresee that in the future, this industry is going to scale at large. And for that, we want to be able to be prepared and understand how the financial markets are going to work with this particular aspect. Working with the Green Climate Fund is very important for us at the moment. And just to update everyone, we have recently closed our first board approval in earlier this month, which basically awarded JS Bank approximately $10 million. And this is going to mobilize or make rooftop renewable energy solutions, primarily rooftop solar solutions, more easily accessible to the general public. Now, this policy was essentially designed to work in cohesion with the State Bank's renewable energy scheme, but without it, or with regardless of whether the scheme stays or not, the financial inclusivity aspect of this project will still work. How do we see the future? What is very important for us to realize that we shouldn't be the only bank pursuing or being accredited by the Green Climate Fund. We're not working with the Green Climate Fund. We've been able to tap and are working with multiple organizations. It's opened a gateway of organizations that want to work with us because of our green status and the policies that we've adopted. So we're talking to Ecofin, we're talking to Barco, we're talking to FMO and NAMA and GCF. So these are so many institutions, particularly working on climate change, resilience and adaptation building projects. What we need to focus on building our own infrastructures in panels like this and many other capacity building sessions to be able to develop project proposals and get financing that target this specific mitigation and adaptation goals. What we need to focus on is so traditionally banks understand plain vanilla investing and understands how to make investment memorandums, etc. But this is a more technical field where we have to combine the scientific element with the financial component as well. So the banks do understand the financial element, but severely lack the scientific element or the aspects that convey or which framework to follow, how to showcase how a project will become resilient in the future. So that aspect is really lacking from the banking industry, speaking from our own experiences, which is something that we've started working on, and hopefully we want to lead the way for other banks, other institutions to follow suit in the same direction.
Thank you so much, Ali. I would open the floor for discussion and take some questions from the audience who are sitting here, and probably the IT can convey their questions online. So IT will send it to me. So I would like to begin with the first question from Hussain Jawad, whose hand was earlier was raised earlier. Is he left? Okay. Yes, please. I would also request if you could introduce yourself and then
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to the CPI for arranging this very innovative workshop on green finance guidelines for CPEC project. Although this topic is very close to my heart, my name is Mohammed Ali Qureshi, and I'm working as a grant coordinator at South Nation in Islamabad. So actually, I believe that this green financing guidelines it's not only should be limited to specific projects, but it should be limited as for it should be open for all the renewable energy or energy projects basically. And CPEC would be CPEC projects would be a part of that. So my first question, I have a couple of questions. I hope that you don't mind if I ask a couple of questions. So my first question is related to Ms. Nadia from SCP. Thank you so much for enlightening us about what exactly SCP is doing in financing and also providing some products that we launch. One of the products which is under consideration as far as my knowledge is concerned is on asset fractionalization, right? So I want to ask you, and from your experience, can you also let us know that how this asset fractionalization, once it comes to enforcement, would help in building finance for the renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, basically. So my next, I think I have another question, and that is from the JF Bank. That what specific financing products you are intended to introduce in future for the energy renewable energy projects, and its energy efficiency under consideration with this. And last, I would like to make one suggestion that for the CPEC projects in particular, because since we are moving towards developing this special economic zones and industrial parks, so perhaps we could also look into the concept of this eco-industrial parks. Because once we have this, the shared assets will be there, in terms of captive power generation, that would make the private financing more easier, for accelerating such energy projects, basically. So I think that is one thing, an area that we need to look onto and explore the opportunity, because this model is being followed in many parts of the world, including Australia and also in EU as well. So we need to focus on that aspect as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. If you would like to respond.
With reference to the asset fractionalization, this is a new concept. The concept note has been made public, and we are at this stage in the process of consultation and seeking feedback from the public, specifically in terms of how and what should be the mechanics for asset fractionalization and what needs to be regulated and what the regulatory framework needs to specifically cater for. But specifically speaking in terms of how the renewable energy or the green financing can be achieved through the asset fractionalization thing, the concept is not limited to the green or the brown field projects. So anything that can be classified, and the purpose specifically provides for that the proceeds shall be utilized for the green financing and the green purpose, that is renewable energy, cleaning, sanitation, anything. This all falls within the definition of green or the climate bonds, or for that matter, I would candidly use the term earth bond. Anything related to earth can be classified here, which is friendly for the earth. So all those assets that can contribute towards the specific purpose and the cause is green can be fractionalized through the same platform. But definitely as of now, there is no regulatory framework. The framework will come down the road, inshallah, as a result of the consultative process. But as of now, it can, any type of asset can be fractionalized. If the purpose is green, then it can be classified as a green bond.
Thank you so much. I will request Mr. Ali from JS Bank to respond to the earlier question that I'm taking. So Ali, the question that was posed to you on what specific financing products is JS Bank offering? Ali, are you with us?
Yeah, yes. So particularly this project is aimed at focused towards distributed growth of distributed solar grid projects. Right now, we have gotten the board approval, and we will be developing products and giving them. They should be out in the market by around September, hopefully, after concluding the transaction documents, etc. So these products are essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to scale and make easy accessibility for small solutions, home-based solutions, residential solutions. What we saw or what we noticed from the amazing renewable energy team, while it did great for the country, it was mostly tapped by corporate and large-scale companies. If you look at the lion's share of the megawatts that has been dispersed as a result. What we want to create is a distributed, inclusive market where where getting solar financing is as common as getting an auto loan, or as simple as getting an auto loan. So that is what the product is going to be focused on. We expect about 80% of the financing to go towards small-scale residential solutions, which is going to be from 5 to 7.5 to around 9 kilowatt-hour solutions. And we're going to finance that by making the accessibility, the entry criteria, or the processing much easier for every common person to access. What seems to be a challenge in the current times is the interest rate, but we feel that despite the high interest rate, given that the energy prices are going to go up inevitably, it will still be feasible for general public to participate in such products here. And that is what we intend to grow with this project. It's a guarantee scheme. The documents are available on the GCF website if you want to go, and it's public information now. If you want to go through it, it's GCF SAP 024 is the project name. It's a guarantee scheme. It de-risks the bank so that the bank can offer more loans to a wider variety of customers.
Sure, thank you, Hassan. Hassan, would you like to?
It's a sort of question and a comment as well. Since I have been associated with all this, like initiation of all these policies and from technical perspective and financial perspective. So in order to specifically address one component of green financing, which is mostly missing in the existing guidelines, I've been directing the attention of the participants towards the energy efficiency. And in China, if I was even thinking to discuss this with UIT, and which will be discussed later on as well, that there is a huge market which is working there in China, specifically the West Coast market, but being led by the leasing companies, not the typical financial institutions that are the banks. So that has an opportunity as well. And as the banks are regulated by the state bank, so we would like to see the role of SECB because the leasing companies are regulated by them. So their role in terms of bringing international collaborations, bringing in like sort of not only the financial support, but the technical support as well, because there are certain barriers still people see over here in energy efficiency financing. That's why most of the banks are not going towards those solutions yet, or haven't offered yet. So I think so the channel or the key to that door, opening that door, lies with SECP and bringing in those leading companies going towards B2B sort of agreements over here and see how we can like take up the task. And specifically again, as discussed, like there is a lot of job generation potential as well. So so the skill set that is required also that needs also to be looked into, because as the disruptive technologies are coming in, so I think like the more the risk comes over there, so the banks mostly become reluctant in like going towards financing of those things which are new over there, or which are just patented or things like that. So there should be some like sort of platform or some provisions within the green banking guidelines, or if SECP looks into it, because risk is associated everywhere. So how we can mitigate that aspect has to be addressed. Not only, I think not in this session, but later on these things could be discussed as well. And one of the tools, as Lee has mentioned, would be that thing which can leverage that, mitigating the risk level rate. So, so anything from the participants on this leasing side consideration or from SCCP, speak ma'am from SCCP can they can take it back to the office and look into these things, how China did it and how we can replicate it and learn the best practices from them.
Yes, thank you so much, Asad. Asad is working with Nika, national.
No, not anymore.
Okay, but he has a vast experience in energy efficiency. It is also now taken as go hand in hand with talk about in clean energy transition with renewable energy as well. So they both are crucial elements to achieve the clean energy transition that we are envisioning through this process. Next, I would like to encourage more participants. If you have any questions from the panelists, you will also see some panelists who are not here anymore, but we could always convey those questions to email and get back to you. So like I said in the beginning, this capacity building workshop is not end today. We would like to keep you engaged in the process through email, so please keep us, stay connected and throughout the activity and throughout the interventions, be it research, be it the consultative sessions, dialogue, and really appreciating the efforts and your suggestions that we can incorporate and convey to the relevant authorities, regulators, and the other banks, financial institutions, and all the relevant institutions that could play a major role in this green financing. So another question from Ms. Bhavya from Pakistan Environment Trust.
So I have a question for the JS Bank. I just want to know what kind of project has JS Bank actually mobilized the GCF capital before, and are the reports of those projects available on the website?
I'm sorry, I heard half your question. Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, of course. I want to know what kind of project has JS Bank mobilized the GCF finance for, and whether the reports for those projects are available on JS Bank's website.
Okay, so this is going to be our first project with the Green Climate Fund. Our accreditation process was completed only last year in May, and it has taken almost a year for us to get the first board. At the moment, I can clearly speak about the distributed solar project. The information for that is available on the GCF website, and it is soon going to be also available on our JS Bank's website as well. For now, if you want to go through the details of that project, please visit gcf.com. Just Google search GCF Green Climate Fund and search SAP 024. That's Pakistan Distributed Solar Project. That being said, what we intend to work on is going to be focused towards adaptation. The next project that we want to focus on is adaptation centric. And we want to work in a space where we can somehow help assist the agri-silos industry to form the agri-silo industry, basing it on resilience, climate resilience building, premised on the fact that essentially what we would want to do is we want to create a framework or an institution where agri-silos are completely operational and the banks can formalize the lending space for farmers. This is so what we essentially, but however, this is not the only project that we want to work on. There are a couple of other projects that we are also considering working on, including waste to energy, as long as they fall in within the GCF framework and it is strategically aligned with JS Bank's vision. We are willing to consider those projects. So a lot of the projects are currently in the pipeline. The GCF process is quite cumbersome. So we start off the project by developing our partners, developing this project proposal, and it takes about a year and a half up to almost 2 years from project concept to board approval and execution eventually. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have any execution experience with the Green Climate Fund, but we since we have gotten a board approval, we shall have updates for you starting perhaps next year.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Rabia. We have a representative from HPL, sir. Yeah, would you like to have some comments on how the HPL is working very closely? Because we also saw in Dr. Christoph's presentation that you are playing a major stakeholder role in one of the energy projects in terms of crucial.
Thank you. So HPL is one of the since I think last 2 years we've been pretty good working with a lot of organizations because of more being finance. Mr. Margin, I believe, was here from China, almost like 4 to 5 static events that we, event for him. Very one sort of companies. Corporate sectors, that fund. And then for the fact that you all these high power projects and rebalancing projects that are going around, and Pakistan will be one of the disregarded many projects which have government effect. So we have drawn to promote many projects which are government projects. All projects are mainly supported with the projects going from hydropower, solar to wind farms and so it is there from that perspective. From a funding perspective, of course, we have our own funding projects. I think all banks should know this one. Creating more funding is something that we are right now. So you know the doctor, sorry, he was mentioning with regards to the project for Adam. Currently, I believe all that we are facing it's a big project, right? So funding is practically not possible for us. But there is an issue of insurance, which have not at this point, I think, so we started on because as part of funding that we can that would be promotion, more engagement. I don't know years but job opportunities. There should be certain linkages that you might have partners who are engaging a lot of organizations. Also, play a greater role in field promotions. And then this is probably one of them, of course, but I think in general, it should become more organized and more online websites. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think, as we have mentioned a couple of times, this is only the first step, a tiny baby step that we are facing. One of the suggestions by Ali was also right that not just focus on CPEC projects, but since this workshop is particularly for CPEC energy projects, but as a whole, I would just also like to take that this process continues for the whole green banking guidelines for SPP. And we are going to have more consultations even within this month. But I will invite you guys. So the discussion is ongoing, the dialogue is ongoing. That is the process that we are following throughout the first year, but also focusing on what we need to do in the next upcoming years. So engagement with the Chinese institutions, with the financial banks, margin, we are already in talks. They that could play a vital role in this. So I think with this, I would like to thank you to all the panelists who could join us. We have another question from Saddam, and I know that we still have time for the next one. Yeah, sure. I would also encourage probably students sitting at the back, please raise your hands. If I'm not able to see you, probably you could stand up and I can. Thank you.
Thank you. We will Thank you so much for giving me a second opportunity. मेरा क्वेश्चन हबीब है और अजय बैंक से है क्योंकि मैं एक सोलर सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हूँ ग्रीन एनर्जी पे काम करता हूँ हमारे लोगों को मसाइल ये है कि वो सर्किट लोड शेडिंग की वजह से मखलूज होके रहेंगे सोलर की तरफ ट्रांजिशन करना चाह रहे हैं एक भी है पाकिस्तान में सोलर का मैन्युफैक्चर नहीं है कोई भी चाइना के हाथ है पर वहां पे यहाँ पे 72 के हाथ में मार्केट में तकरीबन 14 से 15 रुपए के मार्केट में जो कि एंड कंज्यूमर के साथ बदलना है ठीक है एक तो जो लोग जिनके पास फाइनेंस और कैपेबिलिटी है पाकिस्तान में सोलर का मैन्युफैक्चर पैनल का जरूर सजेस्ट करें दूसरी बात ये है कि अगर मेरे पास कोई कस्टमर आ रहा है तो वो कहता है कि मेरे पास 10 लाख 15 लाख रुपए अगर मैं नहीं है आप हमें इंस्टॉलमेंट प्लान दें बैंक से इंस्टॉलमेंट प्लान सप्लीमेंट कर सकते हैं इंटरेस्ट रेट पर लेकिन कितना मुश्किल करती है उस प्रोसेस को कि आम बनना उसको ठीक है उस प्रोसेस को देखो कहते हैं कि अब 2 पैनल लगा रहे हमारा 2 का फीचर है होगा हम ये अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते इसमें एक और एडिशन है सीपैक में एग्रीकल्चर पे इन्वेस्टमेंट स्पीड्स दिए जा रहे हैं कल्टीवेशन का रूम भी है वो एडवांसमेंट आ रही है फीड चेंज हो रही लेकिन किसान के पास उसकी फार्मिंग के लिए उसको फसल को पानी देने के लिए वो मशीन बिजली नहीं है ठीक है मुझे सरकार से कहा कि इंडिया वाली से आती है हमें सोलर ट्यूबवेल लगा देंगे मैं कहता हूँ कि आपको 25 लाख रुपए अच्छा है लोग 25 लाख रुपए में 100 एकड़ जमीन से भी कमा क्या करो तो अगर सीपैक के साथ ज़राअत लिंक है तो ज़राअत के लिए पानी भी जरूरी है पानी हमें सोलर से मिलता है विंड यहाँ पे चुके हैं तो बैंक से ये रिक्वेस्ट की जाती है कि वो इस इंस्टॉलमेंट पैनल को आसान शर्तों पर उनको प्रोवाइड करें और सोलर पैनल को एफपीआई अगर उनके पैनल के साथ लिंक है तो सोलर का मैन्युफैक्चर प्लांट लगाए ताकि हमारी ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का हमें सस्ता पड़ जाए तो ये इस बैंक से मेरा क्वेश्चन था पॉलिसी के हवाले से
Would you like to?
Jitna the amount that I understood is primarily the focus area of our project with the Green Climate Fund. जो वो छोटा कस्टमर है जिसकी 8 से 9 लाख रुपए की सोल्यूशन है जिसको हम एक किस्त इस आसान किस्त पे मे बी 10% डिपॉजिट मे बी 15% डाउन पेमेंट पे इंस्टॉलेशन पे लेके आए उसको लिए एक ऑल्टरनेटिव प्रोविजन हो दैट इज द कोर कॉन्सेप्ट हम उसी चीज पे काम कर रहे हैं अभी इसके प्रोडक्ट्स कब आएंगे इसके अंदर तकरीबन 6 से 8 महीने लगेंगे हमें but this facility will be accessible for the next 10 years for JS Bank. So इसी जो आपने प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई की है यही प्रॉब्लम हमने भी स्टडी की थी मार्केट में एंड अंडरस्टैंड की थी दैट व्हेन वी लुक एट द डिप्लॉयमेंट ऑफ द रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी स्कीम और इवन दो उसकी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन इतनी ज़्यादा पब्लिक नहीं है बट फ्रॉम व्हाट वी गैदर्ड जो स्टेट बैंक ने पब्लिकली अनाउंस की थी रजा बाकर ने मेड सम स्पीचेस ऑन इट so उसके अगर if you look at the statistics a majority of that 85% I won't know the specific number 85 roughly 90% of that went to category 1 so जो आपका small या SEC C D का जो कस्टमर है जिसकी बाइंग पावर इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं है उसको इस फैसिलिटी इस रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी स्कीम का फायदा what we saw was कि वो इतना ज़्यादा उसको बेनिफिट नहीं पहुंच पाया and that is what we intended to create build in that space to have a risk mitigation scheme that will allow the bank to provide financing for those for that community base bringing in that exclusivity and participation is very important for the growth of distributed solar sector and distributed solar can significantly grow in Pakistan in my opinion and that is what we intend to focus on with these projects. As far as solar tube wells are concerned, we have been financing solar tube wells. Although there is some critiques that we have faced as in that it reduces the water table but in the past we have as a small bank as a number 13 out of total number of banks a small to mid-sized bank हम लोग जिस कैपेसिटी में हमारी जो एग्री फोकस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उसमें हम ये प्रोवाइड करते हैं और हमारे पास हैं कस्टमर्स
जी थैंक यू आसिफ
Yeah, I think, there are points from a perspective, there are products available, jobs, especially state type of the government. There's certain regulations set across. If there are, requirements that we should follow, I think state bank will probably add to that, where they can ease those requirements, maybe even those and then I understand if there are certain level of requirements for application from the bank will be help them where what needs to be arranged. But requirements to each other less the policy because of the specific money the system, which actually request for the score that we have state bank make it approachable
for especially rural areas.
or especially for so of course,
One thing I want to identify, if I'm a vendor with a bank, if the bank has their obligation on me that you will buy this product from me, so the inverter from me, and you will just then install it to the customer. If I want to purchase it from outside, and why I'm bound with the bank should just finance only the money. No, there should be no relation with or boundary with the product that I will be bound to buy it from the take it from the bank.
I think point is that the bank should show that it can do what investment is in. It's not just my investment or my money that I'm investing on. So it's certain standard certain values that this is that's why certain level of people have experience in the market and stand for that. They all because of standards, इंस्टॉलेशन के बाद जब आपने गलत मोबाइल लगा के बात है आपका एसेट इन्वेस्टमेंट है मतलब बेसिकली बैंक का इन्वेस्टमेंट करेगा बट आप रिटर्न नहीं कर पाएंगे आप यू लॉस है राइट देयर आर सर्टेन साइड बट देयर इज डिफरेंट पॉलिसीज डिफरेंट रूट्स अगर आपकी कम्युनिकेशन
दूसरी बात ये ना कि वेंडर के लिए मुश्किल करती है कि आपका 3 ईयर एक्सपीरियंस लास्ट में 3 ईयर एक्सपीरियंस आई एम अ स्टार्टर आई एम प्रोफेसर विद मास्टर इन एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट आई हैव 20 सर्च इन एनर्जी in building sector. I'm an electrical engineer with 2 to 3 years experience in the field, but I've registered a company last year. So why I'm just put out of this circle? That you should have 3 year experience to become a vendor with a bank.
It's a policy that set by the bank. See, you need to have a certain set of experience at the higher up. They don't need to perform for something. See your friendship. Department because it's certain values and certain standards this case so I understand what your question is. I think promotion but after the story gradually after the experience build automatically after cycle
तो मैंने 50 प्रोजेक्ट किए 1 साल में ये मेरा एक्सपीरियंस नहीं रहा 3 साल लाजमी ये ड्राइवर के लिए लाइक डिग्री जो है वो 6 महीने में भी लोग सीख सकते हैं लेकिन 3 साल या 4 साल की डिग्री लेनी जरूरी है अब तो कंप्यूटर की बेसिक हम आ गया तो बैंक की क्यों नहीं फॉलो करता
जी जी सदाम आई थिंक ये तो ओवरऑल एक सिस्टम के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं आई थिंक इस प्लेटफॉर्म का ये भी मकसद है कि हम ये सारी रिकमेंडेशंस राइट पॉलिसी मेकर्स रिलेवेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन तक पहुंचाएं और हम पहुंचाएंगे सो ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर सम इश्यूज और इसीलिए हम यहाँ पे बैठे हुए हैं टू आइडेंटिफाई दोस इश्यूज and to bridge your communication with them. So of course it is out to make a conducive environment to weed out the policies, regulations or banking facilities for sectors and the market. So I think for the rural communities that they are sometimes I think that's very important. So my team is noting down each and every recommendation and I immediately say that there is an outcome of this workshop when the policy paper. There are a set of recommendations that will go into each of the institutions. Some of them are sitting here with us, but there are lots of them who will join us in some of the commitments, but there are some part of us. So yes, thank you so much again. Thank you. Any other questions before we, yes, please, yes, Aman.
Thank you very much. This is Amar from University and Public PPS project. Talking about green financing and the financial instrument, my question is with the regulated body of financial institutions. What are currently different instruments available, specifically to talk about credit risk guarantee scheme? Is there any credit risk guarantee scheme, similar sort of instrument available for financing of green energy projects?
Ali, would you like
it has to be?
Yes, Ms. Najia.
I believe this is specifically is with reference and targeted to the state bank, the regulator of the specific FIs, the banks. Again, there is SCCP doesn't deal with certain credit guarantee schemes, but this question specifically is targeted to state bank. So I don't.
We don't have a representative. I think has left, but as I've been saying, every time. ये सब क्वेश्चन हम इंशाल्लाह will be communicating. There's some we had of course a concept with us, but we also engaged with even the governor level heads of the institutions, which will be communicating all these questions, and we'll try to meet the purpose of why we are sitting here. So any other questions from students, from participants, audience? Kindly. So I think with this, I would like to thank you to all these team, the honorable panelists who have joined us in person and online, and also to the participants who are sitting here in the venue and have joined us virtually online. I'm highly grateful and I appreciate the discussion that has taken place this morning, very encouraging and lots of information. That was the purpose of today's panel discussion in the morning. So now we have a prayer and lunch break, and I would suggest if we could return at 1:45. So we have an hour. Please feel free to. Okay, so there is a restaurant at the beginning, at the front hall. My team members from STPI will facilitate you. So please stay with us for the lunch and the prayer break, and we resume at 1:45. And the next session will be particularly on the renewable investments in CPEC, prospects, opportunities, and challenges. We will be joined by Dr. Yakat Ali Shah, who is the Executive Director of Center of Excellence for China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We will be joined by Mr. Shahjahan Mirza, who is the CEO of Alternative Energy Development World and Managing Director of Private Power and Infrastructure World. We are also joined by Mehmood Group CEO, Mr. Anish Khwaja, from the Mehmood Group of Industries, Dr. Sunny Manzoor, who is the Director, Special Economic Zones, World Investment, and Dr. Rabia Yakel, Associate Professor, HUD of Analysis and Engineering from us. So it's going to be a really high power panel and lots of good discussion that we are aiming for. So please bear with us for another half session for this afternoon. Thank you so much.